r/ProRevenge. Posted by user, Silva Wolf. That time I accidentally worked for the Russian mafia, and proxy blew up a dumpster with bread dough. I'm a professional baker, and have worked for various companies developing recipes and the like. I found a job at a local grocery store, working super early mornings on their pastries for the day. There were usually a few other people there, one of whom was a mixer. Mixers typically follow a spec sheet with the weights of all the ingredients they need to batch mix. It's kind of mindless work, and doesn't require much thought. He was a young guy, fresh out of his teens. We became fast coworker friends, and enjoyed chatting it up about baking, and I'd help him put our supply order away. Good times. One day, a woman with a thick Russian accent came in and handed us business cards. She told us whatever we're getting paid, her company would double it if we came to work for them. I scheduled an interview, thinking this would be a great opportunity for me. It was a new grocery store concept, like a glitzy glammy European-style Costco, whatever that means. When I went in for the interview, the place was literally still under construction. I met their lead baker, and we hit it off right away. He warned me that the big boss had interesting tastes and we'd need to work with that. No biggie. More money, let's go. They hired us both, and over the next several months, it was a really interesting and fun experience. The big boss, thick, burly Russian man, to the point and perpetually angry, wanted this place to be like Costco, mass production of quality pastries. They were bringing in crazy amounts of new equipment, including folders, shapers, and injectors that were easily worth millions. We didn't have much equipment to start, and we were doing a lot of mixing in trash cans. Remember my mixer buddy? Well, he was working on the bread dough, using spec sheets provided by our lead baker. Over time they were bringing on more staff, and it was a lot of fun developing new recipes, experimenting with ratios, and figuring out how to get over constraints for the types of products that boss wanted. Did I mention he was an asshole? Oh yeah. When he was reviewing some cheesecake I had made, he said, "Good job, sweetie." I came back with "Miss, ma'am, or my name is fine." He scowled at me, and from that point on he treated me like garbage. We brought other women on staff. I watched him hit on them. Some of the others were cool with being sexually harassed, I guess. This place was paying top dollar and had to get in good with the big boss, right? So, the stage is set here. Boss quickly turned his business into a game of survivor. He'd fire people on the spot for whatever reason. One day, one of the people he sacked was our lead baker. It came as a surprise since he was developing all the recipes we'd be using. I inherited a lot of his notes, and his development work was divided between me and the mixer. So, this whole time mixer was kissing big boss's ass pretty hard. He was seeing an open position with the lead baker gone, and quickly became invested in the idea of him running the bakery show, and making some serious money. At the same time, my relationship with Big Boss was quickly declining. For an example, I had him sample some cinnamon rolls I had made, and he came back with, "I hate these, they're terrible. What do you not like? We can change anything about them. The dough? The filling? The icing? I don't know, I just don't like them." On a hunch, I gave some cinnamon rolls from the same batch to another lady there he had eyes for, and asked her if she'd present them to him as her own. She offered him the same product I had given him minutes before, and he loved it. Anyway, I noticed that my notes were out of place one day, and a coworker informed me my mixer buddy was stealing my work and presenting it as his own. He was also approaching me and asking a lot of baking questions, which was fine, but I knew that his knowledge of industrial ratio baking was mediocre at best. He was a mixer. Following a recipe is all he knew how to do. Knowing this, I made a decoy copy of my notes, but this time I put really awful recipes, with huge amounts of salt or yeast. Anyone who knew how to build a recipe could probably look at it and go, "Whoa, that's a lot." Not mixer buddy. My original plan was to leave this in an obvious spot as bait and let him steal the awful recipes, but Big Boss had other plans. We sat down for a pre-launch meeting and he informed me I wasn't going to be working in the bakery anymore, and being relegated to store setup. Mixer was going to be taking over as the lead baker. Guess all that ass kissing really paid off, and I was to give him all my notes so far. A day later was when the fun really began. Mixer mixed up a huge batch of super salty cake batter, and I heard Big Boss screaming at him about way too much salt. That's not even where the fun begins. As we were setting up an industrial quantity baking equipment, we had to test the larger quantity mixing machines, and did a test run for some bread dough, with my decoy recipe that had tripled the yeast and sugar. As it didn't come out right, Mixer had to throw it away. His choice? The dumpster out back in the dead heat of summer. Hundreds of pounds of dough. The fun thing about massive amounts of bread dough is that it doesn't magically stop rising if you throw it away, especially in a hot dumpster. A few hours later, I spied out back to see Mixer Buddy shoveling this massive blob of dough into trash bags, that had exploded from the dumpster like an uncovered blender spewing out a yeast-laden smoothie. Sweet revenge. Now, about the mafia thing, this store was really strange. They had been ordering doubles of all the crazy industrial baking equipment and storing them in back. We had nowhere to put any of this. I also looked up the company they were subcontracted under, and it was to a dead address in Russia. Big Boss also had armed security guards everywhere. This was a grocery store, mind you. I had a feeling that this company was more of a front for laundering a bunch of money. I eventually was fired by Big Boss, which was great because I had been job hunting, full well knowing this business was a sinking ship. I had a new job lined up already. They had their grand opening, did business for 3 months, then closed. RIP Mixer. TLDR, I was ordered to give a coworker some recipes I had tweaked to fell prior, and a dumpster blew up. Posted by user, Odd Murphy. The time a tenant had my car towed. About a year before the whole global issue thing, I lost my government job. I am an audiologist, and so I had little doubt I would find work. But I also knew my best bet for top earnings was to work for myself. So I secured my financing, sold a bunch of stocks, and mutual funds that had done pretty well and set about finding a property. I planned to open a practice but buy a building that had rentable space to help bring in an additional revenue stream. I eventually came upon this great little building, in the heart of downtown with a nice, big parking lot. The building was a former commercial garage. The giant bay doors where trucks used to come in and out, were replaced by these really nice walls full of windows that still opened like garage doors, but formed a covered space in front of the units. This is relevant later. I knew the property just from being around town and I thought they looked really cool. They are crisp and modern and, in my opinion, have a cool Scandinavian feel to them. Anyway, I love this building. As I roll up to take my first tour with the realtor and the owner, I pull into the lot, as instructed, and the second I step out of my car I see a woman rushing out of the building toward me. I am wondering, is this the owner? Someone who works for the owner? No, it is a woman with a face full of piercings, loudly telling me I need to move my car now or it will be towed. I have a meeting here. I began. She would have none of it. Move it now or I call the police. She said. I was about to move my car when the realtor and the owner, on the other side of the lot, called over and began walking toward me. She immediately retreated before they got close enough for us to work all of this out. I clarified that I was okay to park there and they confirmed it was fine. I asked who that was, and they told me she owns one of the shops in the unit. Just ignore her, the owner said. She thinks she runs the place. And realtor and owner shared a chuckle. I walk the property and we go over some things and life is good. I get in my car and leave pretty convinced this is the place I need to buy. Because I also intended to house my practice there, I agreed to lease one of the units and start getting set up while all of the closing stuff that needed to happen could be completed. So for about 2 months, I was a tenant just like all of the other tenants. I never really got into the fact that I was buying the building because my interactions with my neighbors were polite but transactional. Well, mostly polite. The woman with all of the yelling, let's call her Megan, was none too pleased with my presence. She owned a store that sold custom-made, well, costumes I suppose? Lots of steampunk outfits and period costumes that she makes herself. Impressive work though, honestly. I have to imagine she does most of her trade online since I seldom see people in her place. I was there not more than a week when she barged into my unit and began making sure I was aware that the parking lot was not for customers and was for them only. And I was only allotted one spot. I said thanks, but I have parking all worked out with Gus, owner. I appreciate your concern, and I showed her the door. The parking lot, which I was purchasing along with the building, has 60 spaces. There are 5 units. According to her, we are each allowed one parking space and no customers or visitors are permitted to park there at all. So I know there are either shenanigans afoot or this woman is speaking out of her ass. Anyway, I ignore her. Time passes, I close on the building. Gus sends out a heartwarming thank you email to all tenants saying he appreciates their years of business together, but that the property is now owned by my company name, LLC, of which I am the owner. Pretty clear stuff. The very first thing I did was I did a reorg on the parking lot. Each unit gets one regular parking space. Primo spots right next to the building. There are 2 15-minute loading spots back there as well. I designated the next 5 closest spaces to handicapped parking. The rest was just parking. My long-term plan is to put in one of those automated parking kiosks, so people who are there to patronize the businesses can park for free, but anyone else will have to pay. But that's down the road. For now, I just needed to formalize some stuff and just accept that I may have some people parking there illegally, and if it becomes a problem I'll just have to hit the security cameras to see who is abusing the system. Anyway, Megan is furious. She is furious that there are not enough handicap spots, there were none before. She is pissed that she needs more than 15 minutes for a loading zone, who is timing it. She is pissed most of all, however, because she was never consulted. Flash forward a few days and I parked on a non-parking spot. The sidewalk in front of my building is privately owned. Basically, you turn off of the public sidewalk and walk down the private sidewalk to where all of the businesses are. I parked on a paved patch next to my unit, on the far side away from the public sidewalk, accessible only by my parking lot. I parked there, with every legal right to do so by the way, because I was unloading equipment. Since I own the space I was parked on, and everything around it, I didn't move my car right after. I walk outside and my car is gone. So I immediately assume someone stole my car. Then there's Megan standing in her doorway with a big shit-eating grin on her face. I ask her if she knows anything about my missing car. "Oh, was that your car? I saw a car parked illegally so I had it towed." I said, "Laugh it up. Any expense is getting added to your rent." I went to the tow company that the prior owner hired, and I laid into him for towing anything from my property without authorization. His argument was that he had a contract with the property. He did not. He had a contract with the company that formerly owned the building that was now null. In the end, I knew arguing would get me nowhere, so I paid him and took my car. I left with hate in my heart and my mind solely focused on revenge. I began really scrutinizing my security tapes, and discovered that all of these unaccounted for vehicles in the parking lot all had something in common: Megan. I had a suspicion that she was selling parking in my lot. So I waited by one of the cars until the guy arrived. I told him, as he walked from an area that was not my building, that he was not authorized to park there. He looked confused, and told me to mind my own business and he pays for parking. I introduced myself as the owner of the lot and asked who he was paying and how much. The answer was Megan and $125 per month. Suddenly, her business made a lot more sense. I thought of confronting her. I thought of just straight up evicting her. Instead, I hired a security company. They set up a temporary booth at the entrance of the parking lot, and a guard ensured that everyone there was there for one of the businesses. If someone parked and wandered off somewhere else, they were told they were going to be towed. Anyone who claimed to be paying for parking would just be turned away. What followed was around 24 very angry people in Megan's store over the course of the week. They paid good money for those spots and now she was pulling out the carpet? People were pissed. Megan lays pretty low for a while. Then global issue strikes and we're all rightly in fear for our livelihood. As soon as it was legal, I told the tenants they could open the big garage door and have a covered outdoor space for their trade. This was a necessary thing to keep them open and was outside the scope of their lease, since they were not allowed to put in outdoor seating etc. Everyone is super happy about this. Except for Megan. Megan's unit is flanked by a coffee shop on one side and a little specialty bakery on the other. So you now have to walk around an outdoor seating area to get into her store. It's the same situation for my unit, however, it just isn't that big of a deal. Megan is fuming. She starts calling the police multiple times a day every day for supposed global issue violations on my part and the part of the other tenants. This was after, by the way, I said absolutely nothing about her being in her store and working even when non-essential businesses were supposed to be closed. The cops stopped coming after her third or fourth call. At this point, I had enough. Her lease was up last May and so I non-renewed it. She threatened up and down that she was going to sue me and when she was done the whole building would be hers. I responded by suing her for the $125 per month she collected from all of those people for parking. Best of all, she just didn't show up to court and so it resulted in a summary judgment in my favor. I don't expect I will collect. Though she abandoned at least a few $1,000 worth of inventory and equipment when she left, so that will help. If you like these stories, hit that like button, and leave a comment below. You can upvote these stories by pressing the links in the description. If you want to hear more stories from me, hit the subscribe button, and press the bell icon to be alerted when a new video is posted.